I recently was on a webinar, and you all are familiar with the organization Green for All? They're in Oakland, California, and they focus a lot on, they're very much involved with Van Jones. I think Van Jones maybe even started Green for All, but they, their main passion is environmental justice issues, and they very much see climate as like the environmental justice of all times, and the climate change, and they just recently started talking about resilience too. They kind of feel like they've always been talking about resilience, but it's become cool now, They didn't necessarily use that term before, but they recognize that you've got to work hardcore in community development and on social justice issues, and they recognize the interconnection between social justice and ecological and environmental injustice. Because, we know that these stressors disproportionately impact people at the local and global level who are already disenfranchised in some way. Women, children, minorities, people who are, in poverty. It's going to be a whole lot harder, to adapt. And so I was really glad to see that Green for All was starting to talk about resilience. So anyway, just keep an eye on them. I tried to find. I was on the webinar and I was trying to find the webinar archive to share with you all, but I didn't find it. But I noticed that they just had this page that they started, so that's kind of cool. They're working on it, and on the webinar they were saying, we're going to keep having this conversation. We're going to keep trying to find, people around the country who recognize that this is an environmental justice issue to work with, and they're looking for speakers, on resilience to continue to have more of these webinars and to keep the conversation going nationally. There's a really great article that I found from the Huffington Post, that talks about the climate change as environmental injustice and the need for resilience from that lens. Because a lot of times, community resilience isn't talked about from that lens. It's talked about in terms very, very often, especially when you're in municipal government circles. This is just something that I've noticed anecdotally, and I really wanted to make sure that you all were aware of this because of the great work that you're doing in the community, and because of your sensitivity to justice issues. It's talked a lot about in terms of infrastructure hardening, and kind of like it's just a matter of our stormwater system being able to handle floods. And sometimes, and I think that's very important. I mean, that's an extremely important part of it. But sometimes I get the feeling that that's the focus, and and I think that just has to do with sort of the culture of municipal government, because we've got those urban planning departments, right? And that's what they're used to talking about, But they're starting to recognize that we've got to start talking to our emergency management people. We can't be in our silos like we used to be, that we really need to get the community together and start talking about what they're worried about. So these kind of conversations are happening, and I'm pretty sure that this instruction or guidance that's coming out with the federal government recognizes that there's a whole lot more to it than that, So that's a good thing. But are you all familiar with STAR? Have you read anything in the paper recently? Well, Fayetteville is not that you've read anything in the paper recently but Fayetteville was actually given a STAR rating, and STAR stands for Sustainability Tools and Assessing and Rating of Communities. and for assessing and rating communities.
You may have to say that a second time.
Sustainability tools for assessing and rating communities. So STAR is much broader than resilience, or this is kind of how this organization has framed it. You know, like sustainability is the big umbrella, and adaptation and resilience is just one of the things that we're going to look at. You know, you could just as well say resilience and adaptation is up here, and all the sustainability stuff helps us be more resilient. You know, but that's how they look at it. They do have let me just say that STAR is extremely comprehensive. It is an extremely detailed and comprehensive community rating system on all things sustainability. And there's a lot in there about social justice and environmental justice as well. And that's actually an area that Fayetteville didn't get rated too well on. Fayetteville did okay. I mean, we've actually got a rating, you know. So, I mean, it could be that we do our inventory and we do this assessment and we find out that we're a 1-star community. The best you can do, according to STAR, is 5. And I believe that STAR is kind of a spin-off of ICLEI. Are you familiar with ICLEI? ICLEI is a for-profit organization that helps communities around the world. They're international with becoming more sustainable, basically, in their practices. They've been around for a really long time.
Consulting?
Yes.
How do you spell that? ICLEI.
It's an acronym.
Oh.
It's ICLEI, I believe. It's either ICLIE or EI, but I think it's EI. And don't ask me what it stands for. It's the mayors. Yeah. Yes, that is one of their initiatives. Yeah, is to get the mayors to sign up to, you know, have carbon reduction targets. You know, to commit to sustainability targets, essentially. But I do believe that the STAR Communities rating system is a spin-off from ICLEI. And Fayetteville decided to pay money and get rated, basically. But in order to do that, they had to gather a lot of data and send it into STAR and get the rating. And they hired the Applied Sustainability Center to do that. So basically, how many of you all know Melody Strong? That's what she did for a couple of years. She worked on gathering the data so that Fayetteville could get that rating. And so we're a 3 out of 5 star community, and we just got our rating not too long ago. I mean, they just had the party like 2 weeks ago. So it's pretty new stuff.
They didn't invite us.
I don't know. It was out there. I don't know how they advertised it, but I want to show you this. You can go down to their website and you can search. Does that make sense? So you just go to their main website and then you go down, you go to search our live map, and then you can find Fayetteville. Kind of just put your cursor there in the general Arkansas area, and then you can click on See Details. See, it says Fayetteville, Arkansas pops up there. And then you can see our report.
Oh, nice.
And you can see everything that we've been rated on.
Oh, good. Okay.
Built environment, these are their broad categories. And then you can see it gets very detailed. Built environment, climate and energy, economy and jobs, education, arts and community, equity and empowerment, health and safety, natural systems, and then they have this innovation and process credits category that I don't fully understand. But it kind of has to do with, you know, are you coming up with anything innovative or new that other communities haven't even done yet, you know, to solve problems? Pardon me? Well, a little bit. We didn't get a big score there. We were 9 out of 50. You know, that wasn't one of the areas that we scored real high in. We scored best in natural systems, health and safety. And when I say we scored best, I mean we still have a lot of progress that we can make in all of the areas. But our highest scores were in these: natural systems, health and safety, education, arts, and community. We did really well, relatively speaking. And then economy and jobs, we did well. And then built environment, we did well. And I mean, we were in the 40s out of 100. We didn't do so great in climate and energy. I mean, we got a 27.9 out of 100. And the neat thing about this report is you can go in and click on any of these and see why we didn't do so well. You know, why did we miss points? And it also shows you what we could do to get more points, you know. And I'll click on some of those here in just a second. But I wanted to show you too that we didn't do so great also in equity and empowerment. So that's like social and ecological justice kinds of stuff right there.
0 on human services.
So let's look at that and see why. So you can click in here and you can say outcomes. And so one of the things that STAR is looking for is reduce the percentage of people in selected priority populations who need assistance obtaining selected priority human services. Services assistance. And we didn't have that. So these are all the things that STAR, you know, that's saying that we could do to improve. Conduct a community needs assessment to identify priority service needs and resources, including the needs of priority populations. I mean, these are things that you want to do in a comprehensive community assessment when you're starting to embark on community resilience planning too. That's why I think this is so neat. Adopt a human services plan designed to guarantee that basic human needs are met in the community. Establish an advisory committee that provides ongoing consultation to local departments and agencies responsible for providing priority human services. Let's see. Equip human services personnel with the skills and training needed to effectively improve the well-being of the community's priority populations. Poverty prevention and alleviation. We got 2.8 out of 20. So it's a really interesting report, and we could even use some of this information when we do our brainstorming here in a little bit.
How do we do on food access and nutrition?
Where is that? Is that under health and safety? Yeah, okay. 7.9 out of 15. Overall, we got an 11.4 out of 15. And that's because we have a local food movement. You know, so that helps us. And the fact that the city has an urban ag ordinance helps. So we got full credit for local fresh foods and food security and assistance, access to healthful foods. We didn't get any credit for that, but we got school nutrition. Demonstrated increase over the past 3 years in the food service sales of fresh fruits and vegetables in the largest public school district. Isn't that fascinating?
That's incredible. I knew nothing about that.
We got 9 out of 15 on emergency prevention and response. Let's go back up here to climate and energy. We got 0 out of 15 on climate adaptation. Okay, so one of the things, it says demonstrate a measurable reduction in vulnerability in each of the 4 core areas identified locally. We haven't even identified any areas. These are some of the things that we could have done to have gotten some credit. Adopt a climate change adaptation plan. Well, we're working on that. That's what we're doing in prep. So it's possible that in the future we could improve our STAR ratings with some of the stuff that's in progress. Require that internal decision by local government departments use the most current climate science and that staff monitor climate change impacts.
We tried.
I remember, you know, I worked at the Applied Sustainability Center too, and Melody would ask me questions because we worked in the same office, and she would be like, is there anything like this going on in town? Because the city gets credit for things that don't have anything to do with the city, you know. So I would tell her about the Citizens Climate Lobby and what OMNI's doing, and that it all kind of depended on how STAR did their rating. You know, like the city could get, or the community could get credit, I should say, you know, for things that nonprofits were doing. But then sometimes they didn't, because it was like something that the city really should be doing.
Is there any way to remain interactive with STAR so that different things, you of initiatives that are taken can be acknowledged?
Yes, like, I do believe that it's the intention that, Peter is kind of like the contact person with the city who, keeps an an ongoing dialogue with STAR. And, I mean, Fayetteville will be rated again, and I think it won't be as big of an involved process as it was before. It'll be more like, hey, we've done this now, you know? So it gives the community, and, you know, and the city government a lot of guidance and stuff that we can be thinking about. And it helps us see where we're vulnerable and where we're doing better. It's a very comprehensive assessment tool. And assessment is the first step, you know, in doing community resilience planning or in any type of plan. You know, even if you work in healthcare, you're not going to apply any treatment until you find out what the symptoms are and what they mean. You know, so it's the same kind of thing. So it's neat to see that that's out there. Develop a committee that includes climate scientists, adjacent jurisdictions, regional coalitions, state and federal agencies, and or non-governmental organizations for the purpose of understanding and addressing shared vulnerabilities.
We're working on the building code. We did get, what are we up to now, 2009 with the city council?
I think that's right, yeah. Adopt zoning code, building code, or other legally binding regulations that address future climate change threats. Create or enhance programs and services that specifically help address climate change threats.
Read the one about enforced regulations.